So, I'm back. Welcome to my little PowerPoint presentation. So, some of you guys may be asking, where have I been for the past month or so not publishing any videos? Well, I've been hard at work, working on a really cool, exciting little project for you guys, and I'm excited to finally be able to reveal that to you, which is I've been working on my very own perfumery course. So actually I've had a lot of comments in the last kind of half year or so asking me if I had a perfumery course, and I always kind of told people no and just referred them back to the free videos on my channel. But I really started thinking about that, and I thought, you know what, I actually think it's a really good idea, because back when I started in perfumery, I wished that I had a really good perfumery course. So I was thinking, you know, what if I went and actually made that course? So I set myself a goal of making the best ever online perfumery course, whilst also still making it accessible, because there are a lot of courses out there which are kind of expensive, and when I was a beginner I never would have considered buying those because, you know, it was just too much. So what is the problem, I think, with perfumery education online? Well, like I say, the courses that are already out there, right, they are either affordable but they don't cover much, so you can get some really cheap courses online, but after having looked at what they contain, they seem to be very surface level and not really give you anything much of value at all. Or on the other hand, they do give you valuable information, but they are completely unaffordable. For example, a lot of these courses are like $1,000 to $2,000 in that kind of price range, which I thought, you know, is just really expensive, because that's a lot of money. And, you know, if you just want to learn how to make perfumes, and especially at the beginning when you're not sure, you know, how much you're going to invest into this hobby and how long you're going to stick with it, you know, you probably don't want to go and blow that much money on a course. Okay, and then looking at the other end of the spectrum, the actual big companies, the people who have all of this knowledge, you know, the people, the real perfumers, they have no interest in teaching you at home how to make perfume, because why would they? You know, they're interested in making money from their own perfumes, so why would they want to go and teach you how to be their competitors? So I have yet to actually see a course online as well, and this is the other point, which includes modern example formulas to study. I went through basically all of the other courses online which I could find, and I'm sure there's ones I missed, but out of the ones that I could see, I couldn't see a single course which actually had modern style perfume formulas. Some of the courses have like classic perfume formulas to study, but none of them had like contemporary, you know, like more designer or niche modern perfumes. And I thought, you know, it's not that it's a scam, but it's really something I think would be quite important to know, because if you want to make professional smelling perfumes, then it really helps if you've actually gone through some examples of making those professional smelling perfumes. So I decided to make the course that I wish I had when I started out in perfumery that kind of solves all of these problems. So how did I get started? I want to take you back to when I began and the start of my journey actually, and talk to you a little bit about what happened back then. So my perfumery journey actually started in high school, and this is kind of when I was deciding, you know, what do I want to be in the future? Like, what am I going to do after school? And I decided to be a perfumer, and this is because one day I had no idea really what I wanted to do. I thought, you know, maybe I want to design planes or something. That sounds kind of cool. And I remember I went on a news website and I read this certain news article, and it was an interview with Olivier Creed, who is a master perfumer and actually a 6th generation perfumer of the House of Creed, a very famous fragrance company. And I was just reading about, you know, him mixing up all of these smells and traveling to these far off lands to kind of search for new perfume ingredients. And I read about all this stuff and I thought, this is so cool. Like, I can be an artist, because that's something I always wanted to do, but I can go and, you know, mix up all these smells, and also use science, because that was something I was good at as well, chemistry. So I thought, this job is so cool. And on top of that, I get to, you know, be paid all right and go and travel around the world. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a perfumer, because that is like the coolest job ever. So what I did was, then I was actually super into this, so I thought, okay, let's actually try to start to make my own perfume. So I went online and did what anyone would do, and I started buying essential oils, and I went and I started mixing those together, and I tried to make my own perfumes. And what happened was, everything that came out, they smelled like these kind of little medicinal blends. Like, I was literally sitting there as a teenager with little plastic shot glasses that I'd bought on Amazon and essential oils, and just, you know, mixing a few drops of each together, hoping that I would come up with like cool smelling perfumes. And, you know, they smelled pretty awful. So then in university, I went to study chemistry so I could actually go and follow this dream. And I thought, you know what, when I got my chemistry degree, then I'll just get a job as a perfumer and then I'm good. And then that will be that, right? So I finished my degree and then I applied for a job at Givaudan. And Givaudan are the biggest flavor and fragrance company in the world. And they are actually the only place that have an in-house perfumery school, which is actually probably the world's most renowned perfumery school. So what you do is you can go to Givaudan's perfumery school, they train you, and then you become a Givaudan perfumer. So that was my dream. And there are other perfumery schools, but they're really expensive. And after I'd done my degree in chemistry and I found out about those, I didn't have enough money to go and do any of that education. So this was kind of like my only option. Anyway, I started doing the interview processes and I sent them my CV. And actually, they seemed to like it, and they invited me back to do a smell test. So I went to Givaudan in Paris, which is really, really cool, and I did my smell test. And eventually, I got a letter back from them saying, yeah, you know what, you've passed the smell test. So that was really cool. And then they took me in for an interview, and that had around 20 other people. And apparently there had been like 2,500 candidates for this position, and I got selected to be in the final 20, to come in to be interviewed. So that was really cool. And then, that was like one of those kind of corporate days where they do all the interview stuff. Anyway, it was so cool because I got to be in the real Givaudan perfumery school myself, which was like the best day ever. So yeah, that was a really fun experience. And then it turned out after that, I got another email and they got back to me and they said, you know what, you've been selected as one of the final 6 people to get this job as a student perfumer. So I was like, wow, this is actually going to happen. This is so cool. So I had to go back to Paris, and this time they got me to basically talk to someone who was really high up in the company, like the board of directors, and they did another set of interviews. So a few months later, I got another email from them, and they said, you know what, we actually really liked you, so we're now going to put you in the final 3 people out of all of these 2,500 applicants for the position. So I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. So I went, and then what I had to do was actually ring someone, which was like the head of fragrance worldwide for like America or something, which was kind of crazy. So I did a phone interview with them, and then I was waiting, I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And then eventually, a few weeks later, I got another message back saying, you know what, unfortunately, we really liked you as a candidate, but we think you're a little bit too young for the position. So, try again later. So I don't know if they're just trying to be nice and, maybe they just didn't like me enough and they were just trying to, say, oh, you're too young. But maybe I was, who knows. But either way, in the end, I didn't get the job. So I was like, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to teach myself because this is my dream. I've been following this for like years and years now. I want to be a perfumer. I'm going to learn to be a perfumer. So I got out of uni and I started my own perfume business. And the only slight problem was my perfumes, they still kind of sucked. So eventually I had to get a job. And I learned perfumery on the side over the years, and actually this is when I started my YouTube channel, and I actually used the YouTube channel to help keep me accountable while studying all of that perfumery. And over the years, and you can see this journey if you watch back through the channel and all of my old videos, you can see over time as I learn new things, I often like to make a video about them. So not only could I learn myself, but I could also help teach other people online. And then eventually I actually learned how to make good perfumes, and when I say that, so I wouldn't say I'm a master perfumer by any means at all, so don't get it twisted. But here is a screenshot from my website, Zero. This is my perfume brand, and if you look, I've got 31 5-star reviews here, which are all really lovely little reviews. So I'm not saying I'm the best perfumer ever by any long stretch of the imagination, but obviously I'm good enough now for some people to really love my perfumes, which is really, really cool. Okay, so and what I have done over this time is I've kind of achieved my dream, in a sense at least, of becoming a professional. Not in the way I imagined it, which was me being at one of these big fragrance companies, but I do it for a living, like my business, right? And I guess that is kind of the definition of being a professional at something, doing something for a living. The only difference is what I do now is, while I still do have my perfume brand on the side, that isn't my main business. What I mostly do is actually help other people make perfume, and that is through my YouTube channel and other projects like the Fragrance Foundry. Okay, so then what was the actual game-changing thing for me to make this transformation? And I'll put it down to kind of 3 key breakthroughs when I was thinking about this. So one of them is this concept which I came up with called the 3 stages of learning perfumery. The next one was learning to use synthetics or synthetic raw materials, because remember I said before I was just using those naturals. Learning about synthetics, the aroma chemicals they also call them. This other type of ingredient, this really made my perfumery come forward a lot. And then finally actually appreciating the craftsmanship and all the time that goes into it. So I'll now walk you through each of those in a little bit more detail, so hopefully you can take some lessons away from it. So, the 3 stages of learning perfumery. So when I started, and I had to teach myself perfumery, obviously I did what anyone else would do when they're trying to learn something themselves, which is you go online. And the problem is a lot of the information I found online was bad. Like some of it was, really bad. So for example, like you take a few drops of this, a few drops of that, put them in a beaker, mix them up, smell it, and if you think someone else needs to be added, then just go add a dash of that and then see what happens. And, I say this and that might sound fine to you, but if you go and take the course, then you'll find out why methods like that are actually super bad and they won't get you anywhere. But anyway, I spent the next few years kind of digging up some like obscure books and coming across articles online because, like my dream was always to be like more of a professional perfumer. I don't want to just be sitting there at home making random little concoctions and then occasionally have an accident and, it smelled all right, that kind of thing. I really wanted to be like a proper perfumer. So, another thing that I learned is actually the students at the Givaudan Perfumery School, they spend a year, just smelling the ingredients before ever going on to make perfume. So if you go and study there, which is kind of like a mini university degree, the first whole year of the course is just learning all of the ingredients and smelling them and learning their smells before you even go and blend anything. And then after reading all these books and noticing how professional perfumers were trained by reading texts from old master perfumers and noticing things like this, it inspired me to term this or coin this my 3-stage model for learning perfumery, which is really very simple. And I've talked about this on my YouTube channel, which is the first step is actually just learning your raw materials, just like they do at the Givaudan Perfumery School. Secondly, learning to make simple blends, so actually accords and bases, and this is when you make blends of things which don't have a natural extract, for example, or you just want to make essentially basic harmonies like a chord and a piano. So a good example of an accord would be an apple accord, because you couldn't extract the smell from an apple to use in perfumery. But essentially by playing with different perfume notes like keys on the piano, you can construct together a complete chord, or an accord as it's called in perfumery, and this actually smells like an apple. And then the final step is actually applying that knowledge to make perfumes. And once you've gone and done these 2 things beforehand, it actually makes it a lot easier to go and finally make those perfumes. Alright, so the next breakthrough I had was really learning how to use synthetics. So this all started off for me from a book called Le Parfum. Now, Le Parfum is actually a book, and I've actually got that book right here. And I'll tell you a bit of a story of how I found this book. So one day when I was doing my master's project, studying, my degree in chemistry, so I did a year abroad, so it was in Switzerland actually. So I was in Lausanne where I lived, and one day they had an exhibition at the museum all about perfume. So obviously I thought, I have to go and see that. And as part of the exhibition, there were loads of different things you could smell, and actually also bits like little excerpts written by the perfumers. And on one of the tables in the exhibition was this little book. And I saw it and I thought, oh, I wonder what that's about. So I started reading it. Now that book was written in French, so it was a little bit difficult for me, but I noticed one thing that really stuck out in particular, and that was a big list of all of the raw materials that were used in perfumery. And actually, this book was written by Jean-Claude Lehner, who is a master perfumer who used to work at the famous brand Hermès. What I discovered was his palette of just over 100 raw materials. So when I saw this, I was really excited because I was like, you know what, I finally discovered the actual real ingredients that real perfumers put in their perfumes, not just these essential oils that I was using before. So as soon as I got home, I ordered the book off of the internet, and then actually later on, I found that there was an English copy of the book too. That one's right here. This one is called Perfume, the Alchemy of Scent. So it's just an English translation, and you'll probably recognize this book if you've been watching my channel, because I always mention it, and that's why I'm so passionate about this book, because this is what gave me the breakthrough for the very first time, on which actual raw materials, including synthetics, I could use. And not only that, but there's also a little guide to some accords in here as well. So again, seeing some real accords from a master perfumer for the first time was a really big deal for me. So finally, I could see what the professionals used. And then I ordered my first starter kit of synthetics. And this is when I started taking perfumery seriously. When I was like, I'm going to have to teach myself. I ordered my first kit of synthetics and then actually started using these. So when I started using them, I noticed these were all these clean, beautiful smells, and they actually smelled kind of similar to the perfumes that you found in shops, rather than all these herbal essential oils. And I finally realized this is the key kind of secret that I've been missing that I never had before. And then this kind of motivated me again, and then now it made me feel like my dream of being a perfumer was possible. Okay, and then also that last little breakthrough I had as well was also actually just appreciating the craftsmanship. So Another little story I wanted to share is that when I started my business, so remember I said I'd just come out of university, so I was like, I'm going to start a business. And I very naively thought that, oh, it'd be easy to start a business, you know? You can just start a business and then you can make money and then you'll be fine. Why do you need a job if you can start a business? So I knew, though, that I needed to make sales. So because I knew I needed to make sales, right, because I didn't have much money at the time, I was like, you know what, I really need to get my first perfume out so I can start selling it. So I rushed it. And then when it finally got released, I took it to the markets to try to sell it. And, you know, a few people liked it. I did actually get some sales, but I knew that deep down, it just didn't meet my standards. I knew that it didn't smell like those professional perfumes that I wanted it to smell like. And then my suspicions were confirmed one day when a woman came to my little market stall. She smelled it and I saw her face kind of screw up and she said, you know, this kind of smells like a room spray. I was like, oh, you know, it's meant to be a perfume. And she was like, I think it smells a little bit like gummy bears. And then I kind of knew at that point, yeah, my perfume's not that great, is it? So eventually, obviously I didn't make much money at all selling my perfumes. Actually, I made a loss because, you know, I was just super bad at business back then. So I stopped rushing my perfumery and I just got a job. And then actually, I still did the perfumery, just now I did it on the side and I slowed it down and I did it just consistently over time. And I actually gave it the time that it needed to develop properly as a craft. And then after all of that hard work, last year the brand Scent Trunk actually commissioned me to make a perfume, which is a really big achievement for me because it shows that, you know, from where I came from making these perfumes, it didn't smell that good. Eventually I made perfumes from my brand and then another brand smelled those and thought they were good enough to want to commission me for a perfume for their brand. And here is a screenshot from their website. You can see my perfume here, Amber Shadow. Looks really cool, and it's got me right featured in here as the perfumer. So I was super happy with this. This was like a big deal for me to get my first ever kind of perfume done for a different brand. Okay, so that was a bit about me. So what about you? What about if you are starting on that journey of perfumery? Well, firstly, I want to cover some common misconceptions. So firstly, a lot of people want to know, like, do you need a good sense of smell? You might be wondering, you know, can I actually go and do this perfumery thing? And the truth is that no, you can actually train your sense of smell. And what I will say is that my sense of smell has improved massively since I started. When I started, I couldn't even smell all of the raw materials, the ingredients used in the perfume, for example, certain musks and things like that. But then over the years, I actually trained my nose. And in my course, I'm going to teach you how to go and do that. Another common misconception is that people think you need a degree in chemistry or a good background in maths because you know all of the formulas and the percentages. Sometimes they're complicated. But actually, no. My chemistry degree was pretty useless for my perfumery. You know, I'm glad I did it because it made me the person I am and it taught me how to study complex things. But honestly, the actual chemistry itself, I'd say I use less than 1% of my degree in the perfumery, and that 1% is nice and easy, and I'll teach you that in the course. And then the other kind of worry that people have is like, do you need a lot of expensive ingredients to get started with perfumery? Now, what I will say is the truth is perfumery is an expensive hobby to have. So if you're on a budget, it's probably not a good hobby to pick up. But that said, those hundreds of raw materials, that is something that you can build up slowly over time, and you can just start with a few. And then, you know, as long as you're doing the right things and you've got the right techniques, then you can just go and get more raw materials when you can afford them. And in the course, I'm actually going to teach you my method for saving hundreds of dollars on raw materials by conserving them. And I'm going to do that by teaching you how to use less raw materials than you would otherwise have to by using them in an intelligent way. Okay, so then my course, what is it actually going to cover? So this is going to be a complete course from start to finish. And it's going to cover everything from like the basics to advanced kind of creative composition techniques. So it's going to be everything. If you've never learned anything about perfumery and you don't know anything about making perfumes before, it's going to cover all of that. But then it's also going to go all the way to the advanced knowledge that you need to hopefully become a good perfumer. And then as well as that, it also includes advanced concepts that I've never actually taught on my YouTube channel. So I teach a lot of information for free over on my YouTube channel, but even then there are a couple of advanced concepts that I never really kind of penned down before, and I hadn't actually really mentioned those. So by getting the course, you'll have access to all of those as well. And then I actually cover each stage in that 3-stage model I have for learning perfumery. So all of those 3 stages: learning raw materials, learning to build chords and bases, and then finally constructing final perfumes. I go into massive detail into each of those stages in the course. And then also there are kind of guides throughout the course for making just about any smell imaginable. So, you know, if there's a smell that you want to make in your perfumes, you'll have a good idea of how to kind of go about getting that. And then also finally, it's going to include a comprehensive study of perfumes through the ages. And that's, like I said, to solve that problem that I think other courses don't always do a good job of that. So this not only goes through classical perfume compositions, but it also looks at some modern ones as well. And I actually use example formulas to look at, so you can actually see the formulas for yourself and actually smell them, and hopefully be a little bit less daunted and actually see what it is for yourself, what makes modern perfumes smell the way they do. Now, it is hard to put a value on this kind of thing, but given that all the other comprehensive courses online usually cost between about $1,000 and $2,000, I thought we could say, to be safe on the lower end, we could say the course is probably worth $1,000. Okay, but then that is not the only thing I'm going to include in the course, because the course also contains my own notes on over 400 different aromatic ingredients or raw materials, because over the years I've gained about 400 plus raw materials, so I thought I might as well actually go and let you guys know what they all smell like, and how you can use some of them to kind of save you that time and maybe not waste money buying the ones that aren't actually that useful and things like that. So, if each one of those little notes is worth $1 and it's 400, I guess you could say that that's worth another $400. But then, of course, there's going to be more stuff in the course as well. So the actual accords themselves, I've put together guides for over 100 different accords in the course. And as far as I'm aware, there's no other course actually with anywhere near this many guides for accords. So I thought, say one accord is worth like $10 or something like that. Surely that's worth another $1,000, right? And then, as well as that, there is also all of the formulas actually included in the course to study. And there's 28 formulas in the course, and this is split up into 12 bases. So bases are a little bit like your accords. So essentially this is, for example, how do you recreate certain smells like rose, violet, or plum? These are all examples included in the course. And then there's also 12 classic kind of inspired by perfume formulas. So these are perfumes like Fougère Royale, which is a very famous perfume, and Chanel No. 5, which is again very famous. So obviously I don't have the real formulas for those perfumes, but these formulas are very close and heavily inspired by those. So you can kind of see the construction of those perfumes. And as well as that, there are formulas for modern perfume. So again, they're inspired by, they're not the real formulas, but they give a very good job at kind of recreating those smells. And these are Baccarat Rouge 540, a really popular niche perfume these days. Aventus, again, a super popular perfume. The Dreamer, which is quite a popular perfume and has some very good lessons that you can learn and take away. And then also Herod, which is a perfume that I didn't know too much about before, but I discovered it recently. But it's a really nice woody incense perfume with a bit of a sweet tobacco note. So say each of those formulas was worth $50, and I'm not just like pulling these numbers out of thin air, because there are actually websites where you can kind of buy some of these formulas online, and generally formulas for like things like perfumes and bases are priced between like $50 and $100. So say on the lower end, again, we price these at like $50, and there are 28 of them, you could say that that's worth another $1,400. But then as well as that, the course also has a community group. So it's not just a load of videos, but there's also going to be a private community. And the benefits of this is it's essentially a priority location to ask me questions, because I really want to support everyone who gets this course as much as possible in their perfumery. But the problem I unfortunately have these days is that, I used to be able to reply to all of my comments on YouTube, but now I get so many comments on YouTube, I get so many DMs on Instagram, I get so many emails and messages on other places. It's really hard for me to keep up with all of these, honestly. So what I actually wanted to be able to do was to be able to kind of provide priority like support to the people who actually support me by buying the course, and the people who invest in me and in their own perfumery education, like the people who are already serious, by getting the course and having access to the community group. It essentially acts a little bit like a forum or a little bit like a Facebook group, which means that you'll actually be able to ask questions, and this is going to be the place that I check most and like first and foremost before any other places like YouTube comments, to be able to give kind of priority support. But then as well as that, it's not just all about asking me questions. The idea of having a community group also means that you can discuss kind of amongst other students. And because everyone investing in the course is going to be a serious perfumery student, not someone probably who's just kind of on a fling just picked it up and they're going in and asking loads of random questions and not having done any of the research, everyone who's done the course will not only be invested, but have watched the same series of videos, also meaning everyone's got the same background knowledge. So hopefully this will provide a really good platform to kind of discuss higher level concepts like, constructing various accords. And then also it's a place to stay accountable, because with anything that you want to learn, any skill in life, sometimes the hardest part can actually just be getting yourself to stick to it. So by having a community group for support and like motivation, that also helps you stay accountable to your regular perfumery practice, because that accountability, that was what was important for me in my perfumery practice, to stick at it for all of those years to get where I am today. So, you know, there's not really a monetary value you have on this, and the idea of this community group is this is ongoing. It's not, say, something that just lasts a year. It should hopefully be perpetual. But say you were going to pay for this kind of thing, like on a Patreon group or something, usually something like that would be priced at $10 a month. So we could say it's like worth $120, right, as well. And then as well as that, there's another little thing in the course, and these are the bonus primer modules. And remember I said you don't need to have a chemistry degree for perfumery. Well, there are a few little chemistry tidbits of information which I do find very useful. And because of that, I've made some extra little bonus modules. One of these is a primer on chemistry for perfumery. So if you've never done any chemistry before, it should just get you up to speed on the amount of chemistry, the very basics that you need to know for perfumery in a really nice, easy to explain way. And actually the exact same thing for math, or maths as we call it here in the UK, because you don't need actually very much maths for perfumery. It's really kind of like high school level maths. However, that said, I do get a lot of people who watch my videos who tell me that they're confused by the maths. So I wanted to go over that and make sure that it's explained in a very nice and easy to understand way. And then finally, this is not actually what the course is about, but I do often get people who don't just want to make perfumes, but other things like diffusers and candles. So I do briefly mention in another little module, you know, what kind of things you need to consider if you do want to go down that path, you know, and what kind of parts of this knowledge will be transferable, and what other things we have to consider that's different from making regular perfumes, which is what the course is about. And as part of this, I also include a guide to the medium that we'll be using to make perfumes, which is alcohol. So hopefully that will help you understand the different types of alcohol that there are and which ones you need to buy. So if each of these little primer modules were priced at something like $50, you know, for a small little mini course, let's say, we could say again, those are like $150. So then all of this, total value of this is $4,070. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, no way, Sam, there's no way that all of this stuff is actually worth that much. You're kind of like twisting it a bit. And you said that this course was going to be affordable. Yeah, of course. This $4,070 is ridiculous. I just wanted to kind of give you a rough idea of the value of all of the stuff inside of the course. So obviously I'm not going to charge that much for the course, don't worry. But I just want to ask you a question right now, and even if it was like a quarter of that price, do you think it would actually be like worth it for all of these cool things that are going to be inside the course? Because, you know, at a quarter of the price, it's like $1,000, which is still on the cheapest end of all of the other comprehensive courses out there, even though it's covered way more stuff than those courses, at least the ones that I've seen from my research. So like I said, it's important to me that the course is going to be affordable. So the price I'm actually going to be charging, at least on launch for the course, is a price of $399. So, you know, I think this is just kind of based on my intuition. I think that this is like a pretty reasonable price for the course. So honestly, pricing is pretty difficult for this kind of thing because, you know, like I said, honestly, I do want it to be very affordable. But on the flip side, you also need to consider, right? So I've spent hundreds of hours of work to actually pull together this course. That is to not only take the knowledge I already had, and then to organize that into slides and make it in a easy to follow, well-constructed way that hopefully you can kind of watch. It's very concise and without being too boring, quickly teaches you all of the information comprehensively that you need to know to go and make good perfumes. And then not only that, but it's actually taken me almost 5 years of my life to gain all of this knowledge, and that knowledge wasn't something that I easily gained. It came through painstaking trial and error and actually sifting through all of these sources of information, some of them being good, some bad, and actually having to discern which ones were good and piecing all of this together. So if you invest in this course, you'll also hold yourself accountable and apply my tools to get real results. So I actually want to relate this to an experience that I had in the past. So back a few years ago, actually for quite a few years, I've been trying to go to the gym and get results at the gym. And, you know, I kept going to the gym for a bit and then not going and then going again and not going. And I would make a little bit of progress, but then I would go a lot and just not really get anywhere. And it's quite demotivating. So one day I decided, you know what, I really want to make good progress in the gym. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to buy a program from online. And part of the reason I did that was because I knew in advance that by buying a gym program, once I'd actually gone and spent money on it, I would have to then go and do it religiously. And not only that, I could actually follow it to a T and not have to think about it anymore. Instead of all the time wasted sitting there at home thinking about which exercises to do and, you know, all of that kind of mental stress, I could just get the plan, follow it, do what it said, go to the gym, and that was it. All I had to do was buy it, put in the work, but putting in the work was going to be easy because I'd already invested, and then I wouldn't want to have wasted that money. So this Perfumery course is actually designed in a similar way to a gym program. So the idea is that if you take the course, all you've got to do is follow it step by step, and because you're already invested, hopefully you'll be motivated to actually follow through with the exercises, and by doing all of the practical aspects, because perfumery is a practical subject, you will then go and learn the actual skills you need to eventually go and make those good perfumes. So another point that I wanted to make is I have a history of launching products too cheap. So, you know, this price is what I thought was a very fair price to launch it at. But that said, there are other products that I've launched in the past, and usually it's only later on after I've launched a product that I realize I didn't factor in enough profit for all like the business overheads that I have, because I do have to live and run my business. And usually my products end up increasing in price. So for example, when I launched Formula, my perfumery software, when it first ever launched, I actually priced it at $24.99, which is, if you think about it, really cheap for a software that I spent months working on. And this software though was actually really popular. A lot of people already liked it. Eventually though, I realized because it was actually a niche software, because not that many people do perfumery, so I wasn't making much money at all selling $24.99 software. I eventually increased it to $49.99, which I thought was still great value for something that you can use every day of your life. But you know, this pricing has worked a lot better for me, for my business. And then when I actually launched my first ever perfume, Vanilla Wood, right here, if you go and look at that, today on my store, it's £70. But when I launched it, it launched at £35. So it's literally doubled in price. This is over the course of about 2-3 years or so. And you know, when I had it originally, people kept telling me that this perfume smelled like £100 plus perfume. I'm not doing this to blow my horn or anything. I'm just saying that, you know, a lot of people actually genuinely thought that this was a really nice niche perfume. But at the time, because it was my first ever perfume, you know, not the one that I'd originally launched, but once I'd gone and learned perfumery, honed my craft, and then gone back to relaunch my first perfume that I actually thought was genuinely a really good perfume. Well, I was still a little bit kind of unconfident at the time, so I wanted to make it as cheap as possible, thinking, oh, at least if it's cheap, then, you know, if someone doesn't like it, they can't complain too much, and if it's cheap, it's at least affordable. But yeah, I still think actually now, after hearing all the feedback and looking at how high priced other perfumes are, that actually £70 is a pretty good deal. So I'm just trying to say that these two things have doubled in price. And look, these other comprehensive perfumery courses are priced at $1,000 to $2,000. So all I'm trying to say here is, you know, it is possible that one day I'll wake up and think $399 is way too cheap for this kind of course. Maybe I'll double it to something like $800. But, you know, for now, I'm just going to launch it at this price and we'll see how it goes. But the point I'm trying to make here is, if you are interested in this course and you really do think this is actually sounds like a really cool opportunity, then I would definitely consider and get it before I wake up and decide to increase the price, because otherwise you're going to be sitting there wishing that you bought it when it was cheap. Okay, so like I say, $399 is expensive, but perfumery is an expensive hobby. So to be honest, like, if you don't think a course that's worth $399 is, you know, worth it for you, firstly, that is completely fine, and everyone has a different budget. But I will say, if that's not affordable, that's probably for one of two reasons. Either you don't have much money at all, and $399 is a lot of money. In that case, then you probably shouldn't be buying perfumery courses. And, you know, if it feels like that would be a reasonable price for a course, but it's just you're not so sure that you want to do perfumery, then, you know, maybe you're not at that stage yet where you're invested enough to need to go and buy that course. You know, you can always go and look at my free videos and just learn a lot using them as well, because, you know, I'm not just trying to gatekeep all of this information. There is a massive amount of free information on my YouTube channel which you can learn as well. The benefit of this course is really having it in a nice, easy to follow, structured way. And again, like I said, all of these extra little bits that I don't cover in the videos, so that you've got this one really easy, concise program that hopefully you can just go through and learn all of the things straight away in the right order, in like all of the little details that I may have missed out in the videos. So, and another point I want to make is, you know, this price, like if you just had like 40 bottles of different aroma chemicals or your like aromatic ingredients, your raw materials, you know, and often they're priced around $10 each anyway. So just for 40 raw materials, which is actually quite a small amount in the grand scheme of things for perfumery, that is like the same cost anyway as a course. Whereas while these are like consumable things which you only use once, the course is like a lifetime of knowledge that you can keep coming back to again and again and again. And as well as that, all of these like really expensive perfumery books where I actually gained some of this knowledge, some of those books are priced at above $200. And all of that information I've gone and distilled out of those books, and I've gone and taken the best information from multiple sources and putting it all into one place. So, you know, I would say if you wanted to get that information elsewhere, you would have to go and buy those books, which is not only going to cost you more than $400 anyway, but it's also going to be all of the extra time you have to now go in to read them and sift through them. So, the final point I want to make here is this is the only perfumery course, at least in my opinion, that I think you're ever going to need. Because like I say, I've been working on this course for quite a while now, and I've put, you know, everything into it. I really think this is the best perfumery course there is. And I do not think you're going to need any other perfumery courses after this. So, whether or not this course is or isn't for you, I really do not mind at all. But if you are interested in it, then definitely right now go and visit the link in the description below. And aside from that, thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation with me, and hopefully I'll see you very soon in some videos on my YouTube channel, because now that the course is finally released, I'm going to be hopefully getting back to regular video scheduling on my channel. So I'll see you then.